right, so here we have some more news. Ever since the 11.2 announcements have dropped, all the devs have been on full alert, and they are definitely coming to us with a lot of interviews from the WoWcast to everything you can think of. We have devs, we have directors, and right now we're going to get into it with Marcelian Online. He has two direct developers that he's talking with about 11.2. Let's get into this content. Let's see what they have to tell us all about.
Hey, nice to meet both of you. I'm Taylor Sanders. I'm a lead encounter designer on the World of Warcraft team, and my primary work revolves around raiding content.
Raid and content.
And I'm Andrew De Sousa. I'm still a lead encounter designer. My responsibilities are Dungeons and Mythic Plus.
Okay.
Beautiful. All right. So I wasn't too far off. Okay. Super excited about Ghost of Koresh finally. 11.2 cannot come any sooner, man. And boy, is there a lot to unpack. I guess we can start it off with the first question because I'm dying to know a couple of things.
This is, for better or worse, tied to one of our latest videos. But in regards to the brokers, I don't know how much you guys can clear the air a little bit. We never really thought they were ethereals. We thought they were like kind of like a different kind of entity. But from what we know so far, and they're obviously going to be a big part in the Ghost of Koresh, and they're going to give us the new player hub. Are they actually ethereals? Are they like cousins, or do they just like share similar cultures?
So you're going to have to wait to see that specific detail. What I can say is, they're parking their city on Koresh. They have some interest in the planet.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so exciting.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But I think for players who are interested in that part of the lore, this is definitely going to be a quest line you're going to want to play through and pay close attention.
Well, that's great because we've been wanting more story, and it's great to see what they're going to give us, to see how these two ethereals and the brokers are they related? Are they just habitats in some of the same fields? Were they both on Koresh? Well, now they have put their city in Koresh. I believe that's going to be our main hub, he said.
That gets our juices pumping. And just to be a little bit on topic, I don't know if you guys can answer this one, which is perfectly fine. It's understandable. But will ethereals become a playable race probably at the end of the patch or midnight or maybe when it launches? I don't know.
We have nothing to announce now, but we're always interested to hear what players are finding the most interesting kind of races that they interact with and what they might want to embody themselves. Ever since we introduced allied races, it kind of opens the door there for us to pursue different fantasies for players. So we hope everyone has a great time with the story of the ethereals and the Ghost of Koresh update, and we'd love to hear what you'd want to play next.
Somebody down in the comments of one of my previous videos, they don't want to play as an ethereal. They would like to be in a visage form before they had to go to wearing all of their bandages. And my question was, well, do we actually know what they look like? No, we don't. So it would be I'd be curious to see what they look like. Were they humans? Were they just humans with special abilities who then were turned into what we know now?
Oh, beautiful. Awesome. I guess, it was a little bit on the...
It was a stretch, but I'm pretty sure.
That's it. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would love to play as ethereals. In the same spectrum, will we be able to like visit the Netherstorm and the other ethereal subs like in the storyline, or is it just like constrained into like the new zone?
So we will we'll be visiting classic locations you'd expect, right? Throughout the questing, right? You'll be visiting those Godomes that you saw in the Netherstorm, and in some cases we're even going to return to like the Azure Spam and deal with some ethereals that have gone to the Azure Vaults. Where you end up exactly will largely be on Koresh, but yeah, I would expect some callbacks to some locations you're familiar with in the past,
which is great. One of the things that I liked, like even if you just went to go do the Erythor quest line, it took us back to those areas for Plunderstorm, which was kind of neat because you're like, for you guys who may not have played it, there was Plunderstorm, and then we did a little bit of PvP for some transmog, some mounts, all that good stuff. So when we went there for the storyline, I was like, holy shit, I know this place. You know, so that kind of, it gave me the smiles. It did. And then the story was, I thought the story was decent, contrary to one of the videos that I watched. I thought it was good enough.
Beautiful. Okay.
Cool.
Oh, well, now let's move on to the new dungeon. We're both big Mythic Plus players and love to see like new content in terms of dungeons and stuff. And we're super excited to see the Echo Dome all done in. So in regards to this dungeon, did you guys look in the past designs of dungeons and maybe addressed, I don't know, mechanics, spells, cast, things like that, things that were kind of like toned down for season 2? How do you guys stand from that point of designing the dungeon for this on the upcoming Mythic Plus season? Will we still like, my question is like, if we're gonna pull a lot, we're gonna have to deal with a lot of casts and spells and all that kind.
Yeah, I mean, if you take on a lot of enemies, you're gonna have to deal with their abilities. But as far as like what we're carrying forward from season 2 is like we had a philosophy shift, right, on like how combat is paced and what sorts of spells you see and how often you're seeing them, how long a cast bar is, how much time you have to interrupt it, and you're gonna see that going forward, right? And Ecodome Odani was built with that in mind. I think in some cases we're even just trying to refine our boss design even in dungeons a little bit more, making them more focused or having like a clear hook. Like not every single boss fight has to be super intense for the healer or, everyone's dodging swirls every 2 seconds. I understand, if you're doing a 20 key, that's out the window. Everything's going to kill you, right? But
Right.
that core experience is going to be much more approachable. It's a 3 boss dungeon as well, so we're trying to keep it to a pretty reasonable time to get a couple runs in a given night.
I think that's great news, being a 3 boss dungeon, and the fact that you guys are like maybe streamlining a little bit the boss fights, really good news. I would say from a healer's perspective, because you touched the nerf there with a couple of bosses this season. Swamp Face, are you all?
And I do want to say though, like we're simplifying the boss, but we have very cool bosses in there. There'll be some mechanics you haven't seen before.
Of course. I mean, I'm expecting all out epicness nonetheless. I think it's. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I was gonna follow it up with the dungeon as well, because personally I've been a big fan of Floodgate and how it feels like the design and the pacing of the dungeon has changed, a little bit more freedom in how we pull and stuff. Is a 3 boss dungeon normally changing the way you approach the number of packs, where their position, where the routing is? Because obviously we don't know exactly how the layout of the dungeon will be. So does it change the philosophy of the dungeon design if you have 3 or 4 bosses? And if so, can you share a little bit how?
So we look at overall pacing in general, right? And one of our goals when we're making a dungeon, whether it's 3 or 4 bosses or even 5, like we've done occasionally, it's really about the overall variety and flow. Like using Floodgate as the example that you talked about, it started off very open. We had very free routing, but then we wanted those tight corridors where it's like basic dungeon crawling. And you can expect some of that in Ecodome Moldani with like the different variety. It's an ecodome and it's also set on Crash, so you're going in and out of it. I won't give too many spoilers, right? But some of it takes place in the dome itself. Some of it's taking place in the dunes or the dunes amongst ruins. As far as the flow, right? We think about like the overall experience that we want and the pacing we want. And in some cases, right, like a 4 boss dungeon might have a short timer like Floodgate, because it's like you defeat boss 1 and 2 and 3 immediately spawn with like 1 trash pack in between. So having boss count doesn't inherently affect how we're going to design it. We're usually thinking about the experience as a whole and what we want you, like when we think about a raid where it's like we want you to think about that boss and how you're going to get through that phase. We're thinking about the dungeon holistically and like what does the whole experience look like. That
Yeah, because bringing up Floodgate, you look at Floodgate and you have tanks that are trying some MDI routes. You have tanks that are just holding down W, whatever the case may be. It's mostly the trash that will kill you before the bosses. There are some bosses that really are tough, but for the most part, it's how do you get there? One of my ideas was like, and I was talking about this on stream yesterday. Like maybe they should start putting enemy count in heroic and normal dungeons just to get people ready for some of the things that you need when you go to try and get into Mythic Plus. Not so much. They have it in like your 2 through 7, but for some reason everyone they're not ready even when they get there. I watch One Azeroth and I listen to this man constantly talk about what are the people thinking when they come in, when they come to play? You know, you could have your very low entry casual player, you could have your mid, and then you could have your elite. You know, these are different players that put in valuable time whenever they have it. And then you have other people that really just live and breathe this content to the point where, you know, they're doing the 20s and 23s. It's crazy.
The dungeon itself is the encounter.
Speaking of the raid, because I do want to talk to Taylor a little bit as well here. I know you guys cannot give out too many details regarding this, but I guess one burning question regarding the new raid, Maniforge Omega. Is this the first raid designed with this whole maybe players won't be able to need certain add-ons or weak auras and stuff? Is this the one that where we're going to see this actually start to be applied more and more?
Yeah, so great question. I think in the past, you know, as Ian's talked about our approach to add-ons for the long term, this really is a long-term goal of the team. The eventual removal of add-ons in combat and the type of computational add-ons that have aided in combat over the years, I think will be a long-term goal for us. So it's not something that we have designed in tandem necessarily with Maniforge Omega, the new raid coming, and the Ghosts of Koresh update. But it is something that the team's really taking very seriously on the long term and examining when the right time to do that is. You do touch on something important, which is as we remove add-ons in the future, it's going to be very important for us to partner with our UI team to make sure that the content also fits, right? The same types of challenges that players are used to in a world where computational add-ons can fix problems on the fly are probably not appropriate for a new world where they have to do much of that in combat collaboration amongst themselves, right? Either in voice comms or with in-game systems like pings and markers. So we're aiming at assisting and creating more tools for players to be able to communicate with each other over time. But this isn't going to be something we do quickly because we really want to do it right. And it's going to be something I think that's going to be on a longer term scale than the Ghost of Koresh update.
Okay, awesome.
So they're not talking about so much removing these add-ons right now. That's what I heard. Long story short, they're not thinking about that. Is this going to have those things? Doesn't sound like they're really concentrating on that so much on this raid. But one of the things they've been talking about is they're going to have more communication from the boss, more voice lines. You're going to have to know and memorize what those voice lines mean for the next ability that the boss is going to be doing, and therefore, bring up a defensive or know that there's going to be a big frontal if they don't communicate it and project it. They've done some of that in some of the encounters that we have currently, but it's not there entirely. You still have brown on brown with just a little bit of fogginess before a frontal comes out. Then you have that center brew first boss. He drinks the pot and then he's gonna spit out fire. That's communicated really well. So some are hits and misses, and trial and error is going to have to feedback. If you're vocal and you know how to reach or talk to some of the community members, remember we're supposed to have community members that are taking in all of the information that we give them to communicate that to the Blizzard team. I haven't done it. I should probably get into that more. The more and more that I'm getting into watching more and then trying to communicate with my community as well. I would like to hear your comments on what are the certain things that you feel really hurt you when you're trying to learn your Mythic Plus and make that experience great. I really want to hear that.
I want to quickly follow up on that. We have a couple of questions here, but things are popping up as we go. So I'm guessing you guys know, still in terms of like the raid, in some cases, some people, us included, like kind of like got a little bit overwhelmed with what was happening on the screen, and then the PCs started to really, use all their cylinders, and you see frame drops and stuff like that. You guys are aware of this feedback, right? is this something that you also take into account when you like make mechanics and because it looks I mean, we want to see like super epic stuff and new color schemes and spells and all of that, but in terms of like how is this balance between like making cool mechanics, fresh mechanics, visual like candy, but also not kill the frame rate?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always a balance. There are a lot of parties trying to operate in the same space as we develop in terms of like both visual clarity and performance, right? We want the world, of course, to look incredible, and that takes some tax. We also want class abilities to feel really awesome and empowering, right? We want players to feel like a hero with every button input. And so class visuals need to have some impact on the world. And also, as lasers sweep across the screen or dragons breathe fire on your raid, we want those things to occupy a certain amount of space. So it's always a balance to try to make sure that our raids are both spectacular visually, but also performant. Something we've done recently to allow players to better assess their own performance, and if add-ons are impacting those performances, or in your add-on menu, you actually can see your CPU usage now from add-ons. And we welcome more feedback about that as we go into the future. Hopefully that allows players in their feedback to be able to understand exactly how much those add-ons are affecting their performance. So yeah, it's always a balance, and performance is very top of mind, especially in a raiding environment where you may have 29 other friends casting spells at the same target.
I have like
There, you see, ever since 11.1.5, the game crashes more. My computer takes a shit more, and I don't have a cheap computer. I don't even imagine that I have a great computer, but it's definitely not a piece of shit. I'm not playing on a tomato. And when I was doing Ricky Reverb recently, I was lagging like hell. And everybody's like, turn the refresh rate down on your details, and or turn this down. Shut off. But these are things that I have all the time. It's just this one time that I was doing this fight, I can't move. It was crazy. So I went in there this week, no problems, not a single freeze, not a single shutdown. Well, I had a shutdown before I even got in the raid. The computer had to restart. It's just, there's something going on that is making our computers work harder, and they know what it is. They just are not wanting to tell us. They know. They say this to add-ons. I don't live on a bunch of add-ons and weak auras. I probably maybe have seven. I use of UI. I have a DBM. I use in the raid. Ultimate cursor, so I can not lose my cursor trail, so I can not lose my cursor because it goes all crazy. That's mainly it. That is mainly it, guys. Oh, he killy. I wouldn't be me without he killy. But that's all. That is all.
a personal question. So we don't know obviously a lot about the raid, but what we do know from so far is that the encounter with the raid doesn't really end favorably for the player, from what we understand. The question has kind of like two parts. One, this is in terms of like lore, this is cool because it's not as predictable anymore, and sometimes the good guys don't always win. Maybe this normally creates tension to the next patch and the next content update.
Game of Thrones vibe a little bit over there,
A little bit. So is this something that you're open to do more in the future? And the second part of that is whatever reveal happens that tells us that we didn't actually win, is it the so-called mythic phase of the last boss, or is this something that everybody in all difficulties will be able to experience?
Well, I can't share anything about the mythic version of the end boss, as much as some folks might like to hear about it, especially in our competitive community. But what I can say is, the Ghost of Crush update is going to take us to the homeworld of the Ethereals. I think for anyone interested in the Ethereals and not only their fate, but also their past, we're going to hear a lot about the history of that race and what comes next for them. But in terms of the period victory or the perception of that, this is not the end of the World Soul Saga. In World of Warcraft, we're telling a huge, long-spanning 3 expansion story here, and it's really just beginning. So we may see a conclusion for the Ethereals here and a closing of a chapter, but Xalatath is out there, and she may have taken a back seat briefly in the liberation of Undermine, but she'll be back in full force and up to her schemes in this update.
Okay.
Right. We cannot wait for it. Can you tell us?
Yeah, like I was going to use Xalatath in my in one of my thumbnails, and I'm like, well, I haven't really heard too much about her coming into this patch, but I would assume, and I didn't want to assume because I didn't want to be called, clickbaiter, but it looks like she is going to be back. So that is something. All right.
Tell us more about what the general player experience might be with the new content, phase diving, exactly what that would entail, what can we expect from it, and any juicy stuff that you can share.
I can speak to this a little bit. So in the outdoor world in Koresh, Koresh is a world that has, as you can see, it's a shattered world, right? A world that has had a history that is very volatile. And so there are a lot of latent energies and void power sort of like hanging out in the area. So among the wastes of Koresh, players are going to find access to a powerful item called the Rishi Wraps. It's an ethereal artifact that every player will be able to obtain in the Ghosts of Koresh update. And this is going to allow them to sort of phase into a different version of the world, right? They're going to become energy, much like the ethereals become energy, and be able to interact with new objects, see new enemies, and encounter new monsters while they're diving into this sort of arcane version, just shadow version of the sands of Koresh. So there will be plenty of content in the outdoor world to engage with and plenty of rewards to accompany them.
Regarding the,
That's one of the things that I was kind of confused about, because when we were told that the Koresh was destroyed, I much imagined it like Galactus going and eating your world and then it just being eviscerated, like there's nothing left. But that doesn't, of course, seem to be the case here. I believe there seems to be zones, but then where they're talking about their phase diving, so they'll be able to take us from one phase into another, where then maybe they won't have to worry about so much of what is still left of Koresh, but then utilizing the 2 phases so that we can then have more content to go through and get our what is that going to be, the artifact cloak, and get our, see all those rares and things like that.
the dinars stuff and uncapped quest system. Are you guys like willing to do this consistently, like halfway through a season, or have you given it a thought to maybe just let it go right out the box? Just asking.
Yeah. So I think we've heard a lot of great feedback from the mid-season turbo boost that we implemented in season 2. We'd love to hear more player feelings about that. I think what has been really apparent to us is that this has been a real breath of fresh air. It's allowed players who are pursuing those mid-season goals, like Keystone Legend, Keystone Hero, right? Maybe AOTC or Cutting Edge, to really like give them that extra, bite to chew, right, in mid-season. So I think we're very interested in some type of mid-season boost again. Whether it takes the same form is something that I think we're still discussing and designing. So we've generally think the feedback has been good about this type of refresh, but we are trying to, this is kind of the first time we've done something like this, right, in the seasonal model. So I think when we take another swing at it, we're going to just consider feedback very carefully, and we don't have any details to announce right now about what form that might take.
Well, and they have been listening. I mean, because that turbo boost, that kept me and a lot of my community available and excited. And you still have some of those that are off playing Elder Scrolls Online, and you still have them off playing Expedition 33. So many games and great games out there to if you don't want to play World of Warcraft, you can go play that. But it's great to see that they are still communicating and listening to the feedback, because with that, and it looks like more and more the artifact weapons might be coming back, or artifact gear might be coming back, because I don't think anybody really were upset about chasing the legendaries. What I think they were more upset about was the fact that they would grind for the gear, and then when you would hit the next expansion, it just was not there anymore. You know, it's sitting in your bank because you can't destroy it, you can't sell it, and it's things like that. So you know, I kind of wonder about those. I don't care either way. I'm gonna have to do it because I like making things change about my character. I like seeing what kind of new powers I can get. So I'd like to play the game. I really do. So I want to see how we can, you know, besides 11.2, like 11.1.7. I like the idea of the belt. I know that that's just temporary, but it still gives me a goal. And I think as a race, you should always be goal orientated. You should be always wanting to see numbers go up and things like that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, it definitely got us all pumped up to do way more content halfway through this.
Much more Dungerino. So that was good. I think it's for the best to continue this in season 3 as well. It's definitely a banger.
I also wanted to ask something that came a little bit.
It also looks like the one button rotation came just in time for Flame. I do not know what happened to his arm, but this man is in a fucking sling and it looks like a wrap. So he did something. He's gonna need that one button rotation.
New in season 2 and what your thoughts are about it going in season 3, and that's particularly for the Brazilian keys and how you guys see it on your end. First of all, for us, it's been a almost net positive experience when it comes to pushing keys with your friends. I've heard the mixed opinions about it, but I was curious how you guys see the, I would guess might have been an experiment. I don't know if you intended to keep going with it in season 3. And if you do, I have a slight follow-up question. Are you willing to change the key level at which this would apply? Would it be able to be applied a little bit sooner for people who still want to push but maybe find it difficult to get into groups and lower keys? Or is this a risk at bottlenecking players into specific key levels? And because it's like a +7 is resilient, nobody's going to do a +6 or something like that.
Yeah, so I can speak generally to some of our thoughts about the resilient key system. I think generally feedback has been pretty good here, and we've been pretty happy, playing with it ourselves for how it feels. I think it's been able to give players a really natural goal to try to achieve in the system, and feels like there's some like a stopper there for them, so that there's a clear demarcation between sort of progression and then also where they can start really pushing and experimenting with strategies. So we've generally liked how the resilient key system has worked out in season 2, and we have no major plans to change the structure of it, but always listening to feedback, especially as we go into another season, and certainly going forward for additional seasons, we're looking at ways to improve that system since feedback has been so positive.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that. Resilient keys, I've been a total fan of. Now that they start at +12, maybe they should come down to a +8. Because you need your gilded crest at a certain point. Tell me what you guys think, or do you think they should be key wide once you get all your 2s, your 4s, your 5s, and you just have resilience? I've enjoyed it. Now, have I been pushing a lot more? No, I've hit my 3,200, and now I think it's time to concentrate on some alts, see what kind of things I have to do with that now that we have the improved experience gains and reputation gains and things like that. I want to see what different classes I might be able to get ready for 11.2. It'd be interesting to see what they do different with resilient keys, because I still need to get my shaman up. My shaman is sitting like I think at 664, which is great for me. I play with Sam. And if you guys know Sam, he only raids. I'm going to actually do a video for Sam because he is going to have to learn how to craft. The man doesn't craft. Anyways, so I'm really interested to see how well I can continue this for all my classes. And I do stream on Twitch, by the way, and Kick now. So come on by, help me help you type of thing. We'll work on some alts. And yeah, here we go.
Great to hear some. Back to the Rishari raps. This has to be, I guess, the official quote-unquote borrowed power, more or less, item in Ghost of Koresh. So I was wondering, since we don't have much details, I mean, apart from the fact that it will definitely be something we need in the raid, and it will unlock a lot of cool stuff in the alt world, is it, I don't know, will it have any special effects, like different effects for healers, DPS, or tanks, or will it just be like a regular stat item that will just raise and raise and raise up until 1 point or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So it will also be, in addition to being, something that will allow you to interact with objects in the outdoor world, it's going to allow you to traverse in a really interesting way throughout the raid. Several different areas in the game, in the Ghost of Koresh update, the Rishi wraps are going to allow you to really embody that fantasy of an ethereal. It will also be a very powerful item. It will be something that you want to keep on you throughout the patch. There is a socket in it that you'll be able to customize to your secondary stat. It will be upgraded throughout the patch by obtaining items from a variety of different PvE activities. So you can continue to work on that item, continue to progress, and then it will have an additional proc in combat that players will be able to enjoy while they're in raid encounters or dungeon or whatever your content is.
Okay. And this proc will be like cater specifically to the role, or will it be like a pure damage proc or something? Or
it'll be something that all roles find useful. So healers, tanks, DPS, don't worry, you'll all find that you'll want to keep the cloak on you for sure.
More power.
That's good. I wanted to also ask you guys a little bit about classes in general hero towns going into the next patch, depending on how much time we have. You guys have been pretty good at keeping things updated, fresh. Whatever you probably might have seen something lacking, you've addressed it, like how Dark Ranger talents were for hunters. A lot of hunters might have found that not really embodying the Dark Ranger that they might have wanted. So I was curious if there are other plans of addressing other hero towns that might not be according to like the modern version of the hero towns that have gone through a couple of iterations. Is it something that you're looking to prioritize or keep in touch with the community feedback, or something that maybe you think could use improvements? And if there's anyone that you can share with us that you have in mind?
Nothing to share today, but our class design team is always reading feedback very carefully. Usually, some of our larger reworks generally happen at expansion boundaries. That's when we feel like we can take larger stabs.
That's what I've heard. Like in my last video, sorry. That's exactly what I heard. Like Blizzard's not big in trying to do reworks at the middle and end of an expansion. They're usually doing it just there to give you all of your reworks at the beginning of, say, in midnight. So that's when you'll get a lot more news on the reworks that are coming. There'll be some balance tuning, but other than that, you're not going to get much now. It would do what I think it would be too I think the word I'm looking for would be too jolting, especially if you were the loser of the tuning or the rework rather, at
the type of gameplay that players are used to. But always listening to feedback, and I think where players want changes, please let us know. The PTR server will be going up very soon. We'll announce our plans for that within the next few weeks. So please join us on the PTR, give feedback there. All class feedback is incredibly useful for our designers as they try to put the finishing touches on any class changes, spec changes, and hero talent changes in Ghost of Koresh.
Moving towards like the new patch and the new season, I wanted to touch a little bit on the group finder thing, because it has a little bit of tension points, particularly like for healers and tanks. As much as like season 2 was great in almost all capacity, it was kind of punishing. I feel like a little bit more punishing for tanks and healers this time around than even season 1 of the War Within. And this definitely affected like the group finder stuff. Like a lot of people like tend to do their dungeons and keys through group finder. So I was kind of going to ask, like, is this something you guys might want to address in Ghost of Koresh regarding tanks and healers? And I do want to mention here, tanks have been buffed recently in a hotfix for the threat. We know that.
Yeah.
But are things like this more prevalent in the new patch?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say they're more prevalent, but we are very aware of sort of the group finder boss, right? A lot of the time when you're trying to find a group for a key or potentially like a raid pug, that feels like the first obstacle, right? And so we're listening to feedback very keenly there. We feel ourselves when we play the game, right? And so it's something that I think we're taking very seriously, and we want to take a swing at soon. And we don't want you sitting around. We want you in dungeons and raids, right? We want you playing the game and not doing laps, to trying to find a group. So we want to make sure players have the right tools to not only find a group that's suitable for them from an item level perspective or for the content that is appropriate for their character, but also make sure that you can align with the same goals, right, with other players. If you're trying to push a key, that's a very different social environment than just trying to get your ball right for the week. Get that high key and not worry so much about the timer. So it's important for us to put like-minded players together, and we're looking at new ways to try to give players the tools to find each other effectively.
I was gonna follow up a little bit with kind of like on topic. I guess it's directed at both of you guys. We all know that balance between specs and classes is always going to be a talking point, and it's never going to be perfect, and somebody's always going to think, oh, the other guy has it better. And
that's why we have good Tillis videos.
Indeed. I'm pretty sure similar things have happened in past seasons, but maybe it has become a little bit more obvious this season, particularly in Mythic Plus, with specs that are a little bit AoE capped, like Fury Warrior, for instance.
Yeah.
Windwalker, we understand that the cap essentially exists to specialize different damage profiles for different types of pack pool sizes. Sometimes it feels, particularly for Fury Warrior, that even though it should be like a 5-target specialist, it doesn't always feel like it's going to be the 5-target specialist, when sometimes during a 5-target encounter, you can have specs that are, let's say, uncapped in AoE that are doing a little bit better than a Fury Warrior. And this might be difficult to adjust mid-patch or mid-season. And was curious if you guys are considering this when you do balance tunings, or if this has ever been a contentious topic, or is it just community perception at this point?
Yeah, so large topic that I think we could spend a long time on if we had it, but I think a key part for us is when we talk about balance, that doesn't necessarily mean, and you touched on this as well, that each class is equally good at everything, right? We want to make sure that each dog has its day. Each spec has something that they really feel like it's their time to shine, right? That they can excel at. And that, as encounter designers, is something we have to work on as well, right? It's a collaboration between us and the class design team to make sure that each class, each spec, and each hero spec has something that it really excels at. And we make sure that we present those scenarios on the other side of the coin from encounter design perspective. So what our focus is to create a variety of different combat scenarios, both through our seasonal dungeon pool and also through the 8 raid encounters that are coming in Mana Forge Omega, to make sure that each class, each spec, each type of DPS profile, at least and each type of healing profile as well, sort of has their moments to shine.
Did he say 8-person raid 8-person raids that are coming? Because that takes me all the way back to Final Fantasy 14. They've been doing that. So I'm curious.
Always a focus of the teams, especially in collaboration between our team, Drew and my team, and the class design too.
Maybe this is just a specific raid that we've had in the season 2.
I always think that the cap, you should just take the caps off. But according to him, every dog has their day. I disagree with that. You can only take 5 people into a Mythic Plus. So everybody should have the ability for the tank to pull as many, because they pull a lot, and just pop off, and not have to make sure that you have uncapped specs in your group to make sure we get all of those guys down as quickly as possible, because we have the timer. We have to make sure that the tank has the cooldowns. I don't know.
But we know certain classes bring a raid buff or a group buff that, kind of sometimes guarantees a spot in their raid, depending on the guild, of course. And there are certain classes who don't provide a particular raid group, but they provide other type of utility. For instance, like warlocks have their gates and their hellstones, and death knights have their famous grips. And for the longest time, it felt like there was always at least one boss that favored grips a lot for death knights. For instance, I'm just using death knights as an example, but I guess we can think about all of the classes like this when we have encounter design. Is this something that you're aware of whenever you're designing encounters? Just like you said, we want every dog to have their day. Is it something that you're thinking, oh, we would like Death Knights to feel like they're impactful on this fight, or Warlocks that they could use their gate efficiently on this side? And is this something that we can expect in the new raid by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our pillars really of encounter design is empower the player. And what that means is making those buttons feel incredibly heroic. If we don't put the problems and the obstacles down for you to feel like you can challenge you, right, and give you those heroic moments, then the player really never gets to feel like the hero. So we're always designing with those buttons in mind. Is this a time for grip? Is this a time for to save the entire raid with a well placed demonic gateway? Is this a place where a power word barrier is going to absolutely shine and save our pull? So it's our job as encounter designers to put those obstacles out so that players can soar over them with all the awesome buttons that the class design team has created for player classes. So yes, it's our absolute focus. And I think in Manaforge Omega, there will be ample opportunity for every class to shine. Whatever tool you have in your tool belt, whether it's, health stones or, some type of teleport or, DR, we try to create a landscape where every type of utility really has a time to itself.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
And since we got Andrew back, I guess we can close it off with a final question for him, because I wanted to filter down a little bit in terms of the dungeons and the Mythic Plus season. A good addition in season 2, changing all of the mechanics on the ground, seeing them a little bit more simplified but much more impactfully visually, right? Even with that, and I'm not talking about high keys here. I'm talking mid-range, let's say from 12s to 15s to 16s, okay? As I played a healer this expansion, I felt it. Will we still have situations where a mechanic can one-shot you or can one-shot a DPS in this season, or will this be toned overall down? And this also was kind of in relation to the question we had for Taylor regarding the raid. Will this season maybe take into account or look a little bit more at the new philosophy regarding, less add-ons, less weak auras, more visibility within the actual game?
Yeah, so the goal here is that, we tune things at the core experience to not one-shot you. Obviously, we start pushing at the ceiling here once we push into even mid-range keys, right, where things are doing 200% more damage than they were originally. What's important to us too is that it's very clear on the ground, which you saw with the visuals, that you have enough time. We give you, a good 3.5 seconds to get out of here. If you die, we want you to say I could have moved out of that, not upset with the game, obviously. As far as one shots and whatnot, there's two schools of thought as far as penalty damage, where it's just a DPS in a swirl versus a heavy triage dot, where we want one of those to be more manageable than the others, even going up into higher key levels. So there's the inverse effect, where if we aren't punitive enough on a swirl, for example, it's a healer problem. And when the debuff we want you to hit, that we want you to heal goes out, it's also a healer problem. So we're always taking into account, this sort of feedback and thinking about the wide range of experiences that we're trying to serve with the Mythic Plus audience, right? We're going from 2 to 20 in this season, right? And where you're getting one shot is going to change depending on your skill level, your gear level, and your group comp.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Ghosts of Koresh sounds great. We are hyped as, cannot say it on a video, but we know how hyped we are, right? So hopefully we're going to have a lot more information soon. And this is very promising in all capacities, lore-wise, atmosphere-wise, vibe-wise, all of the stuff that is coming. Cannot wait.
Thank you very much for being open and answering some questions that we've been having from our community as well for a while. It's been really, really awesome to see that you're taking into consideration so many of the perceived community concerns that we've been having over the months.
And you guys are actually listening too and implementing stuff. That's amazing.
Troop Dinko, man. We do our best. Yeah, nice seeing both of you guys as well. Hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Cannot wait. We're sure. Thank you.
Great questions. Good luck and have fun out there.
Thank you. You as well.
Very much.
There you have it. That is awesome. That is what we
Patch
want to see.
11.
Oh my god. That is awesome. I want us to be really enjoying this patch as much as just I want this to be the best patch. I want it to be better than 11.1. You know, I want it to be better than 11.0. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. That was a great talk with these developers. We'll look for more of those to see if there's any more coming out, if there's any more information they can give up and open up about. I know I might do a little late with the Wowcast, because that was something is where they talked about the phase diving and the new environments that we should be seeing and what it is we want to try and get into there. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for being here. If you like it, please give a thumbs up, leave a comment, let's discuss. And I will see you all in the next time. Until then, keep calm, keep your head on a swivel, and be good to one another.